And good evening, baseball fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We have been away for a couple weeks, and of course, it just happens to have been like the busiest 2 weeks in the baseball season, both in the college ranks and the baseball ranks, the major league ranks. So we have a lot to get to tonight. And of course, joining me is my co-host who is almost done with hockey. I think he's got about 2 weeks left, and he'll be able to focus a little bit more on other sports. If you're a fan of the network, you've seen him on a bunch of shows here. It is Freddie B. Good evening, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, good evening, Mike. How are you doing?
Love that applause button. My favorite button.
Love it.
We're gonna roll with that one for sure.
Did you have? I know you mentioned we missed we missed last week. It was Memorial Weekend. Did you enjoy your weekend?
I did. Although I will say, traffic getting to where I needed to go on Friday had me doing this. Pretty much. And then it had my heartbeat going. So yeah, it was.
That's a normal commute here in Southern California.
That's fair. Yeah, you're used to that over there for sure. How was your Memorial Day weekend?
It was great. You know, being a big racing fan. You know, spent watching the Indy 500 on the Sunday, and then a lot of baseball. A lot of baseball over the course of the weekend as well. You know, we had the start of the college baseball conference tournaments, college softball tournament was going on. There was so much action. I got my fill of sports for sure.
Well, excellent. Hey, that's what you got to use those long weekends for sometimes, right? Absolutely awesome. Well, reminder, if you're a fan of the show, do be sure to follow us on X. You can follow yours truly at IESR_DMV, and you can follow Freddie at FreddieB_sports. And let's jump right into it. Of course, we start every show with our current score update. It is Monday night, so we do have live games going, and not a huge lineup, but a decent lineup. This week, currently, we've got the Tigers are beating the Rays 10-5. In the bottom of the eighth. The Tigers need to hold on to this one in the worst way. Freddie and I will get into that in a bit here. We've got the Marlins and Nationals in a tight one. It's 4-3 Marlins. That one entering the bottom of the eighth. The Nationals coming to bat, hopefully looking to retake the lead there. The Royals are leading the Reds 8-1, another team in desperate need of a win. That one is in the top of the seventh. We've got the Twins leading the White Sox 5-4. That one in the fifth. The Brewers are beating the Giants 8-2. That one in the bottom of the fifth. And we've got the Rangers leading the Cardinals 1-0. That one is in the top of the fifth. Later on tonight, we've got the Rockies and Angels in a matchup of two teams that are slowly becoming irrelevant in the grand scheme of the baseball season. We've got the Dodgers at the Diamondbacks as somebody from the division has to try to catch the Dodgers. And we've got the Mets facing the Mariners, another team who we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But of course, the dominant topics in the baseball world right now are in the college ranks with the College Baseball World Series. The regionals are actually in the book. But I want to backtrack just a smidge because Freddie kind of talked about it in his intro, talking about Memorial Day. Freddie, did you have any significant takeaways or any impressions from the conference tournaments before they set the regionals?
Yeah, you know what? Going into the conference tournaments, I really, what my focus was UCLA. They were number one ranked from start of the season till the end of the season. They had a couple of hiccups, lost a couple of games to lower ranked teams to close out the season. And then they go into the Big Ten tournament and win all three games in walk-off fashion. They could have been eliminated. The first game against Purdue happened to come back then. And they fought their way through the tournament, got there. Number one overall seed, and, get to host the LA region. And then we see what will happen with them just this last weekend. So, but I mean, my focus was on them. I thought they were one of the best teams we've ever seen as far as record wise in college baseball and how dominant that they were. And I wanted that to continue, and it just didn't happen.
Right. No, absolutely. What the team that we talked about, for the first, 9 episodes of the show, being one of the best, most well-rounded teams in college baseball, falling short. And that does take us to the regionals, which kicked off this past Friday. Not really a point in looking at which ones were we shaping up for the upsets, because we had some upsets
Jeez,
to
did we?
talk about. Of course, you mentioned, and the one you got to start with at the very top left of the bracket in the Los Angeles region, with UCLA getting eliminated, and in almost, you want to say, definitive fashion, like losing the first game here to St. Mary's 3-2, putting them in the elimination bracket against Virginia Tech right off the bat.
Yeah.
They squeaked by.
They had to come from behind to beat Virginia Tech.
Right. They had to come from behind there too. And then to get another elimination game against St. Mary's again, and for St. Mary's to beat them once more and knock them out before they even got to really the final of the region. Now, Cal Poly, who I guess maybe fortunately you could say for them never had to play UCLA, beat Virginia Tech, and then curb stomped is the only way I can describe the second game there. St. Mary's 14-1 before finishing off St. Mary's finally yesterday. So Cal Poly, the team that clearly everybody picked to make it out of that regional, moves on. So I guess congrats to Cal Poly. Any other thoughts on that top regional?
Just the lack of situational hitting UCLA right there. At one point going into that St. Mary's game, I think it was, or it was the Virginia Tech game, when they had to come back, they were 1 for 27 with guys in scoring position. And, they ended the tournament, I think it was like 4 for 35 or something like that. It was not good. And then that game, the last game, the elimination game for them, when they lost to St. Mary's, they had a 5-3 lead going into the 8th inning, a 1-run lead going to the 9th. And just, you know what? They were kind of fishtailing towards the end of the season, had a couple of close games in the conference tournament, and it just caught up to them, I think. And, disappointing. I wanted to see what they can do going forward, but, props to Cal Poly. They looked good in the games that they played. Yeah. They just got done, winning the Big West tournament before that, beating a good Santa Barbara team in the Big West tournament to get to that point. So good on Cal Poly. Now, we'll see what that matchup looks like for them in the next round.
Absolutely. And that takes us to the next update we have. If you go down the next bracket, the 16 seed overall was West Virginia, the Morgantown bracket. They're actually in the final game. Winner moves on with Kentucky, 5-5 in the top of the 10th. So that one's got some pretty fresh live drama there, but it's kind of crazy to think that the top one of our super regionals could be Kentucky and Kentucky and Cal Poly.
Yep.
It would be a really interesting matchup there. Binghamton and Wake Forest were the other challengers in that bracket, and they've both been eliminated.
That's not even the biggest. That's not even the biggest. That's not even the biggest second round matchup I think we're going to see, Mike.
No, I don't think so, because I think we're about to get to it. So we have two more regionals. Right below that, Hattiesburg, which was hosted by number 9 Southern Miss, and Gainesville, hosted by number 8 Florida. Both out, gone, eliminated. I mean, this is rivaling like NCAA basketball March Madness right now with all of this craziness. And of course, the teams to move on, again, teams everybody predicted, everybody had this obviously in their super regionals, Troy and Little Rock.
Yes.
Freddie, give your thoughts there.
You know what, Mike? The last show we had before the vacation, we both talked about Southern Miss. They had cracked themselves into the top 10. Were they going to host? They did host the Hattiesburg here. I think they were ranked number 8 at the time overall. And they did not look good in that tournament. Got walked off, I think, in one of the games as well. And what can you say about Little Rock, a 4 seed? Maybe the weakest of all the brackets with the teams that were in there. Jacksonville State, had a good season as well. Virginia, they were the two, not the same Virginia team that we saw a couple of years ago, but
No.
yeah, good on them. And you talked about, in Gainesville, the Florida Gators go down to Troy. I mean, that
Yeah.
was a shocker as well.
Yeah, and what's crazier is Florida had walked through. They put up 22 runs on Miami in the second game. Like
Yep.
they were walking through this one, and Troy had to have back double victories in order to beat them, and they managed to pull it off, which has to be one of the craziest come from behinds that we've had so far in this tournament. I think what shocked me most about the Southern Miss was just how like easily they were the first of the ranked host teams to
Yeah.
get eliminated, did not win a single game, got upset by Arkansas, by Little Rock in the
Mm-hmm.
first game, and then losing to Virginia in that first elimination game. Just utterly disappointing for them. But Troy Little Rock, yeah, it's going to be one of these teams is going to be in the College World Series.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be
One,
exciting.
like, guaranteed. Like there's no like funky little double elimination group of 4 brackets. No, one of Troy and Little Rock are going to be in the College World Series. If you had to pick one of the two, which one would you go with?
I'm going to probably go with Troy just because I mean, it looked this week in that bracket, they put up a lot of runs in every game that they played. So it looks like offensively, I'm going to probably go with them. But you know what? That's going to be a fun one to watch. I don't know how either team is matched up against one another. But yeah, I'm always for the underdogs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'm also with you. I'm leaning Troy there, but hey, look, it's gonna make the next round fun, anyways. You're gonna have one of Troy and Little Rock, and potentially one of Cal Poly and Kentucky.
Yeah.
We're in for a very entertaining final 8. Moving down the list, we move to Chapel Hill, probably one of the more boring brackets. North Carolina swept through, no major, little bit of a challenge in game 2 from Eastern Carolina, ECU, but ultimately really nothing to worry about for the Tar Heels. They move on, and they're actually one of the higher seeds left now, as we will get to here in a little bit. College Station bracket featuring Texas A&M, USC, who is obviously a team that we were very well focused on throughout the season. Lamar and Texas State. Texas State made this one a little interesting by beating USC right off the cusp. But USC got their revenge, and now they're in their final match. Right now, that one just kicked off bottom of the first. So one of these teams, both good teams, by the way, USC, Texas A&M, 2 really good schools, should lead to a good matchup there against UNC in the Supers.
Look at the last 3 games for SC. They win 19-6, 15-4, and 14-3. This is like USC football out there right now.
Yeah, somebody insulted the coach's dog, or said something about one of the players' moms or something, because they woke up there. Man, but we'll see. But either way, those are
the other half of that bracket, the Chapel Hill one, like you said, North Carolina, one of the top teams in the country, and they proved it. They looked good in their bracket, so they're going to have a nice, couple of extra days off. They didn't have to play any elimination games or anything like that, or double headers. Some of these games are have been playing late into the late night, early mornings. The game, in the bracket that's going to go, we're going to probably talk about next with Auburn and Milwaukee. They're playing their championship game right now as well. I think that one just started. And bottom of the first. That game started 11:30 p.m. Eastern last night.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you look at Auburn. If Auburn pulls off the comeback, they'll have played 5 games with some late ones too.
Yeah,
like, man, you got to wonder if that's going to eat at them. A little bit surprised to me that NC State was the first one knocked out in that bracket there. NC State usually at least a decent baseball team, but they were the first ones there. And then right above them in Lincoln, Nebraska getting knocked out by Ole Miss.
Yep.
Well, actually, technically they got eliminated by Arizona State, but they lost to both teams there. As Ole Miss swept through, no losses, but close games, 7-6, 6-3, and then 5-4. So not necessarily dominant fashion, but hey, all you got to do is win by one run, right?
That's it. Yeah, and Old Miss last night winning that game in 10 innings over ASU, so they advance. I mean, this is an Old Miss team that was a World Series champion just a couple of years ago as well.
Think Ole Miss is going to be solid in the next round, and maybe like I said, if Auburn moves on, maybe a tired Auburn team could open up the door.
Sure.
Like Ole Miss to join some of these other upset special teams, and make some noise in the next round. Moving over to the other side, another really interesting. We'll go bottom up because we'll save the other interesting upset
Sure.
for last year. We'll go with the boring portion of the bracket, this bottom right quadrant here. Georgia, had Liberty, Boston College, and LIU in their bracket, swept through. None of these games particularly close. Liberty did their best to try to keep up, but ultimately couldn't do it. Not much really. And if you have any other notes on the Bulldogs, but I didn't see really much to.
No, just a little controversy with the home run yesterday and the taunting or what it was. Mouthing off to the Liberty bench. They say his mother was sitting above the dugout. He was talking to, waving to his mom or gesturing, but getting tossed right after hitting that home run. That was kind of the topic of conversation going on yesterday. But I mean, Georgia it was a top team this year as well, and
now they're the top team.
They look. They probably them and North Carolina, I think, are the two teams that I really like going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Moving up for Mississippi State and Starkville, 14 seed, probably pretty easy draw, I gotta say, for a 14 seed here, getting Lipscomb, Louisiana, and Cincinnati, and they showed it that was a pretty favorable draw. Sweeping through, scoring 39 runs in 3 games. So really strong offense there by Mississippi State. So they will face off against Georgia. Nice little SEC matchup in the Super Regionals.
That's going to be a really, really good matchup right there.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. Yeah, it's going to be a good one, especially if Mississippi State can keep up that offense.
Sure.
That was really impressive. Eugene, Oregon, the Oregon Ducks sweep through theirs, beating Yale, Washington State, and Oregon State. I would have thought Oregon State might have put up a little bit more of a battle with their in-state rivals there, but they ultimately could not overcome.
You know what was so crazy about that bracket, Mike, is that you had 3 former Pac-12 teams that are in 3 different conferences now, and they were all in the same region.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty crazy. And then you had Yale.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yale, one of those teams. I mean, you would say one of those teams that would just happy to be here, but I'm sure a lot of people probably thought that about Little Rock too. So I mean, hey, it's one of those crazy things. You never know. Austin, Texas, the Longhorns, another team. Really only UC Santa Barbara was the only team in here that I thought would have given them a run for their money. And they did in the last game. To their credit, UC Santa Barbara made it close, only 6-4. But Texas able to hold on here. So we got Texas and Oregon in the Super Regional. So it feels more like a football matchup than a baseball matchup. But what are your thoughts on that one?
You know what? Oregon's been playing pretty good ball. They were eliminated in the Big Ten tournament by UCLA in walk-off fashion. But they ran right through the Eugene tournament region. Texas is a good team. I think this is going to present another really good, super regional here. I don't know who to take. Obviously, you'd probably lean Texas, but I would not be surprised if the Ducks make a series of it and could pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to be probably one of the better. Looking at the matchup slate, probably one of the better super regionals we're going to see here. Moving up, we had Tuscaloosa with Alabama, another team walked right through. I mean, some
Yeah.
closer games. We'll ignore the Alabama State game that they started it with the 21-3. But USC Upstate made it a pretty interesting matchup in the second game, and Oklahoma State kept things pretty close there. But ultimately Alabama was able to move on and get the victory there. And then moving up to the Tallahassee regional. Now I was mad when I saw this regional at first, because I was mad that they stuck Coastal Carolina in Florida State's host region. I was like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair to get that. But then, of course, as everybody would have predicted, Florida State and Coastal Carolina are playing in the first elimination game.
Yeah.
And so Coastal Carolina, who was one of last year's finalists, as everybody recalls, for the College World Series with LSU, gets
Yep.
eliminated, and now neither of them are contenders moving forward. And Florida State tries to fight back. They beat Coastal Carolina, they beat NIU, and then St. John's is just able to edge them out. That happened earlier today, actually, was that elimination game. So both the softball and baseball team for Florida State hosting regionals and getting eliminated.
Yeah, you know what? I did watch that game this morning. It was nice. St. John's came back. I think it was 2-0 Florida State in the first, or 3-0 Florida State, or whatever it was in the first inning. And then St. John's, and I even texted you. I was like, they just hit a grand slam, and they
I
ended up
saw that message. I saw that message. I was like,
ended up holding on, to win that game. I think it was 5-4.
Yep.
But that was another huge disappointment of a big, powerhouse going down in their home regional.
Absolutely. But hey, we're getting to another big one in a second, so don't go away from us, folks. We got one more big one coming up. First, though, Lawrence with Kansas. Now, I thought Arkansas would actually make a good run of this, and they did have some close games, Arkansas and Kansas, but Kansas ultimately held on there yesterday, and they will move on to face Oklahoma, pulling off the upset in the Atlanta regional. Now, I don't know about you, Freddie, but probably through Saturday, I probably would have fallen asleep for the rest of the regionals and said, "All right, Georgia Tech's moving on," because they had that first game where they beat up on UIC 22-5, and then they even beat Oklahoma in the winners bracket 9-3. And at that point, I would have been like, "All right, it's over. Oklahoma's not coming back," but
I even tweeted out, I was like, man, this Georgia, after that first game, they were mashing the ball. Von Lackey and everybody else on that team could hit bombs. Yep. And I thought that they were, maybe the favorite to win the whole College World Series just because of how skilled they were offensively. And they had a lead today as well against the Sooners, and they blow that game. We've seen so many of these games where teams cannot hold the lead late and they end up losing. And, Oklahoma walks it off with a big homer in the 10th.
Yeah. Just so crazy.
You had your number 1 and number 2 national seeds eliminated in their host regionals. They didn't even get out of the regionals. So
didn't even
crazy.
Get out of the regionals. And you're looking at minimum 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 unranked with the potential for 3 more depending on the results of current games. And by the way, this West Virginia-Kentucky game just will not end. But yeah, no, this is a very exciting tournament, very entertaining game so far. So Freddie, you mentioned you really like UNC and Georgia moving forward. Any one of these dark horses speaking to you? Obviously, we know, like we said, one of Troy or Little Rock is going to be in the College World Series, but any of these lower seeds you think may be pulling off an upset here?
A team that I followed a little bit this year as they made their way into the rankings was Kansas. Kansas, they played their way into hosting the regional, and now they're making it to their first super regional in program history. You think about, Kansas Jayhawks, basketball, baseball, they've never made it to the super regional. So this is a first for them. And I think that could be a team that can continue. That might be, kind of a surprise in my opinion. If I had to choose somebody, I like them, possibly Oregon are the two, teams that I think that would be lower seeded that could possibly advance.
No, that's a great pick right there. I'm looking at, I think, yeah, and they won't count as a lower seed if Milwaukee wins, but Ole Miss, if it's Auburn, I think Ole Miss still has a really good
Sure.
chance of moving on there and getting one of those College World Series spots. No offense to St. John's, I think Alabama's a little too good. I think that run might end there. Same with Mississippi State going up against Georgia. I think Georgia's just probably too good.
Yeah.
Uh, for that one. But yeah, and look, Ole Miss could be my dark horse. Although, like I said, if Milwaukee wins, maybe that's not as much of a dark horse pick.
I'm pulling for Milwaukee. They're losing right now, 1-0 in the top of the second to Auburn. So we'll keep an eye on that one as we go
No,
on.
in the spirit of just absolute chaos, I am with you. I am also pulling for Milwaukee, just in the spirit of
Just
absolute madness. And you know why? It's because softball has so much less madness, right? Because when we were covering, when we were looking at the regionals there, it was like, okay, it's all of the higher ranked teams, right?
yeah,
That's really how it was. And now we are into the World Series, and not just into the World Series, we are in to the World Series as right now. So, quick recap, because again, we were out last week. The super regional winners, we had Alabama overthrow LSU. We had Mississippi State, which you called.
I called that one. Yes, sir.
You called Mississippi State over Oklahoma, and I think I kind of backed you up a little bit, saying if Mississippi State could make it a long series, if they could make it the full 3-game series, I think they have a chance, and they did just that. So hey, look, if you listen to the guys on the Bullpen Bulletin, good things happen. Just saying. Just saying. So what if our predictions jinx people? It's fine.
They usually have the reverse effect, but in this situation, I got it right, and I was like,
Hey.
you know what? And that we were picking against an Oklahoma team that was, they hadn't lost in a regional, and defending champs, right? And it happened.
An Oklahoma team, it not just hadn't lost in their regional, outscored their opponents 28-1 in the regional. So yeah, that was a bold move. But hey, Mississippi State, they pulled off the upset. Then in the other regionals, we had UCLA over UCF. We had Texas Tech beating Florida, Tennessee beating Georgia, which in classic Tennessee style was 3-1, 3-2, or 3-1, 2-1. So that's exactly how Tennessee likes those games. Arkansas beat Duke. We had Nebraska beat Oklahoma State, and we have Texas beat Arizona State. All right, now we've summarized the super regionals. Now we get into the actual juicy brackets. So what have you seen? So what are some of the impressions you've had so far as the brackets have played out? And by the way, for those of you who don't know, we already have one of the finalists, it being Texas. Do we have the second one yet?
The other game just ended in walk-off fashion as well.
Yeah, Texas Tech beating Alabama. Am I seeing that?
Yep.
So
Alabama scores 2 in the top of the ninth. Yeah, Alabama scored 2 in the top of the ninth, and then Texas Tech scoring 1 in the bottom of the 7th. I'm sorry, scoring 1 in the bottom of the 7th to win it.
Nice. So there will be one more game between those two. It looks like tonight, starting
probably in about 30 minutes
really
from now.
rough for those girls. It's really rough. Like, hey guys, we know you just walked off. You got 5 minutes.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, you got it. Who's your next starter? I hope you got someone ready there.
Wow, yeah, we could have a Texas Tech matchup.
We could. It's going to be one of Texas or Tech versus Texas Tech, or Texas versus Alabama SEC showdown. Yeah, Mississippi State, despite their heroic run against Oklahoma, was actually the first team eliminated in bracket one. Bracket
Mm-hmm.
one being Texas Tech, Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Texas. And by the way, I noticed they did a weird thing, and I don't know if this has been the pattern in years past, but when they got to the losers brackets, um, they switched brackets. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did
So
not
Texas Tech was
notice
in
that.
bracket one. They won their first game against Mississippi State. Then they lost to Tennessee. And after that loss, they got flipped to the second bracket and played UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Nebraska, who was in bracket two, won their first game, lost their second game, and then got flipped up to bracket one.
Yeah, I did notice that. I don't know why that was that they had done that.
Yeah.
I never
It's weird
seen that
because
before. I don't know if
it's
that's
almost
what the yeah.
given Texas Tech the opportunity to sneak into the final despite starting in the same bracket as Texas.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah,
I thought that was really interesting.
it it is. Now what happens so if Alabama wins that second game here tonight, then they play tomorrow, I'm assuming, correct?
Looks like they get 1 day off.
Okay.
They get 1 day off, and then the actual final series begins on Wednesday.
Gotcha. Okay.
And mind you, as well, we noted this before the show. Texas also played a doubleheader today, as they entered the final, needing to beat Tennessee twice, and they did so. Tennessee uncharacteristically giving up 9 runs in those 2 games
Yeah.
to get the victory. So we've got Texas and one of Texas Tech or Alabama. Arkansas was the first team eliminated in bracket two. UCLA had a valiant effort against Texas Tech. Did much better than the baseball team too, so give them credit there. So I guess we're kind of at that stage, and it's tough to gauge, right? Because we don't know who the second team is, but your three choices basically at this point. You've got Texas for sure, and you've got Alabama and Texas Tech. So of those three, Freddie, who is your final pick to win the whole thing? And keep in mind that whoever you pick, you're jinxing.
Right. So I'm going to go with Texas. I think that's the safe bet right now. They're already in because I don't know who's going to win. I mean, Alabama and Texas were both ranked 2 and 3 in the country coming in, and Texas Tech was just right below them as well. So they were all top 5, 6 teams in the country. But I would like to see the interstate matchup. And you know what I've liked following as well, along with this Texas Tech team, is that Jason Williams, his daughter plays for the Red Raiders. Remember Jason Williams, former NBA player, Florida Gator. His daughter plays for Texas Tech. So I've been following him on social medias as well. So that's kind of cool to see that, also,
his nickname wasn't his nickname White Chocolate or something like that?
Yep, White Chocolate. Yep.
White Chocolate. Yep. Shit. Phenomenal player. Injuries derailed his career a little bit, but man, he was a fun to watch for the Sacramento Kings. There are highlight reels on the internet of him just doing whatever he wanted really on a basketball court.
He was like a personal and one tape, just of himself. He was so good. I mean, the way he, could pass the ball and find guys, his vision, he's better than like Magic Johnson if he, stayed healthy. I mean, the way he was a phenomenal player. I loved him. West Virginia just walked off Kentucky.
Hey, all right. So now we know it's West Virginia. Moving on. Hey, good for them. A host team winning. That's almost becoming rare. On the baseball side of it. But I did want to, before we go to break here, just to wrap up the softball side, and I kind of noticed this last year, and I think it's mostly been the trend, and it's kind of a little bit of a trend in women's college basketball as too, although maybe it's bucking. I've noticed with the women's college sports, it's almost always the favorites, right? Like the lowest seed to move on into the super regionals was UCF. who was still a top, 32 team and still in the top half.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have, a big upset of a Cal Poly or a Troy or a Little Rock like you're seeing on the baseball side. Do you think, like, what are your thoughts on? Do you think that's bad for the sport? Do you think that there's a parity problem, and that might be a hindrance overall to the appeal of the sport? Because to a certain extent, it's got to feel a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Boring for the top teams to be winning every year.
It's always the top teams. It seems like you've always had the teams in the South, the Oklahomas, the Arizonas,
right?
Yeah, I don't know. You really don't see the upsets like you do like in college baseball, for example. We've seen so many already. Obviously these teams recruit, and now I don't know, with NIL, how does that play in the women's softball side?
Right.
I don't know exactly. Are they just targeting the best? You got probably 20 top teams in the country to choose from to play college softball at. That's going to get you a chance to win a championship, and everybody else, you're going to get playing time. But I don't know, Mike. That's a great point, because we really don't see that. It's always the top teams in the country. The top teams in the finals here in the College World Series were all in the top 10 in the rankings,
right,
as well. So there wasn't really anybody outside of that,
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed it with the women's college basketball. It's almost always, I actually joked about it with my coworkers. Like just pick the 1 seeds to make the Final Four. You're going to get at least three out of you're going to get at least 3 out of 4 right, and that's always true. I mean, there's a reason why not super long ago the UConn women's basketball team won 110 games in a row, or even very, very recently the Oklahoma Sooners softball team won 4 World Series in a row. So
that dominance is just no. You're right.
Yeah.
It's just women's sports, maybe in general. I don't know what it is. They just have put these dynasty teams together.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I feel bad for some of these softball pitchers' arms, man. I mean, they're just getting absolutely worked. One of my friends who also follows baseball, he said a pitcher for UCLA threw like 180 pitches the other day in a game or something like that. It was,
you know what, too? They're throwing from a shorter distance, and if you calculate the speed at which they're firing the ball home, it's gonna be faster than a Jacob Mizorowski fastball, and underhand too, though, is a natural motion, so you don't get you could throw 150 plus pitches in a game, then come back out there and throw the next game, because it really doesn't have a whole lot of wear on the arm. You don't have the snap of the elbow or the wrist, and the way that underhand is a lot more natural than it is an overhand pitch for baseball.
That's a great point. That is a great point. By the way, be careful using the word snap in pitching. You might jinx somebody into an elbow injury here.
Uh-oh. Don't want to do that.
Somebody check the headline. It might have just happened just now. Who knows? We might have just done it. All right. Well, that will finish. And by the way, next week, by the time we come back here, we will have a softball champion who we'll get to congratulate on the show. And we will have the baseball regional should be in the book. So we'll be able to talk about that World Series. So that'll be a really interesting discussion topic for us there. We are going to take our break. When we come back, we are going to jump into the pro leagues and think about what's going on in the boring Major League Baseball. I don't know, kind of a little snooze fest up there nowadays. But do not go away. You're listening to the Bullpen Bulletin here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hi, eSports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the iSports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are into the second half of our show. We're going to check in on more scores because the games are still going on tonight. We have one final in the books. The Marlins did finish off the Nationals 7-3. Two games in the bottom of the ninth. We'll start with the less contentious one as the Royals are beating the Reds 9-1. I think they'll be able to finish that one off pretty solidly here in a few minutes. And then we have the Tigers and Rays. Now the Rays have mounted a little bit of a comeback here. In the eighth, they put up 4 runs. So now it is 10-9, bottom of the ninth. Looks like Will Vest on for the Tigers trying to salvage what would be a much needed victory. Across the league as well, the Twins are still leading the White Sox 9-4 now in the top of the seventh. We've got the Brewers leading the Giants 10-2 now, that one in the middle of the seventh. The Rangers and the Cardinals, a little bit more scoring now. End of the seventh, that one 2-1. Our 3 West Coast games have kicked off. The Rockies already have a run-up against Jose Soriano as well, who has come back down to earth since his absolutely ridiculous start to the season. But they are doing some damage there. Diamondbacks and Dodgers 0-0 in the bottom of the first, and then the Mariners Mets 0-0 in the middle of the first. And that will take us to I guess it would technically be 2 weeks in review, but we're going to take a look at how things went down across the league this past week. And Freddie, you have some teams that you are excited about that are doing really well, and you have some teams that you are wondering what in the world is going on, if I recall.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams. I want to see if the Tigers can hold on. There's 2 outs now in that ninth inning. That was one of the teams, them and the Royals. What's going on with those 2 teams right there? I mean, both, fighting for last place right now in the American League Central, just don't have an identity. And, and there's a lot of good players on each of those teams. And that makes you start questioning, are they going to be sellers here shortly as well? You know what's going on with Skubal. His injury, he's going to be making a rehab start here. I don't know what to think of those 2 teams right now. They're kind of just, going through the motions. I really liked the Royals. I think I had them pretty high, maybe finishing, third in the division. And then we both, I think, chose Detroit to win the Central again.
Yep,
And,
that is
I'm
correct.
highly
We did.
disappointed with them at 22-38, 16 games under 500. That's, that's crazy.
Yep.
But on the other side, we're seeing the Dodgers. The Dodgers are on a roll right now. They've got a big lead in the NL West, the biggest lead that they've had all season. But they're playing a Diamondbacks team starting tonight, which usually gives the Dodgers some fits. So I'm looking forward to that. If Arizona could win a couple of games in this, they could, cut a game or two off of the Dodgers lead and be in second place at, in the NL West. The Brewers. I want to talk about the Brewers because they're starting to pull away in the Central.
Yep.
The Cardinals are still up there at 5 games over 500. I didn't expect that from them, going in being here on June 1st. But Jacob Mizorowski, I mean, what could you say about that guy right there? I mean, look at the month that he had, 1 run given up the entire month of May, and the velocity of his pitches, the strikeouts, everything going on right now. He's definitely in talks, I would think, to be a candidate for Cy Young at this point in the season. But let's not be outdone by Christopher Sanchez of the Philadelphia Phillies, who went the entire month of May without giving up a run. 44 and a third or 2/3 innings right now for Christopher Sanchez of scoreless baseball. That's insane.
Yeah.
He had 4 games of 7 innings straight without giving up a run as well. And in the month of May, Christopher Sanchez numbers here: 4-0, 45 strikeouts, 3 walks, and 39 innings pitched, and a 0 ERA.
Yep. And a sub-1 whip, too. Now, what's amazing is that he pitched 5 games and somehow only went 4-0. That's the part that's actually really impressive, is
Right.
that he didn't give up a single run and somehow in one of those games did not get the win. And in fact, the Phillies actually lost that game because Yohan Duran came in and gave up a run in the 9th inning, a
Yeah.
rare moment for him as well. But that's just how ridiculous his money. Yeah, both of those guys. That's been a popular debate on X, is who really had the better month. And I just got to say, hey, let's just admire greatness, guys.
No, they were both fantastic. I'm a stickler for pitching, and anytime and especially in this day and age of baseball, Mike, that the starting pitcher, you'd be lucky to get 5 innings out of a guy, and a lot of the cases you don't even get quality starts out of guys anymore. And these two dudes are just being masterful at what they're doing. The run that Christopher Sanchez is on, he broke a Phillies record that was set by Grover Cleveland Alexander in 1911, which was 41 consecutive scoreless innings. So Christopher Sanchez is at his 44 and 2/3. He'll be facing the Padres on Wednesday. That's going to be a really good game. He just played the Padres last week and dominated. I think he struck out 10 in that game as well. So with the anemic Padre offense, I think he could extend his streak. And then we're talking, if he can go another game, we're inching closer to Oral Hershiser numbers.
Yeah, no, absolutely insane. And I think what impresses me most about Sanchez is the length as well. 39 innings in 5 games. That means that for 5 games in the month in May, the Philadelphia bullpen only had to cover 6 innings total.
Exactly.
Like, that is a massive boost. And now the Phillies have Zach Wheeler back, who is also giving them some quality play as well. So, that's one of the reasons why the Phillies are doing so well. And then, Mizorowski just absolutely absurd as well. Despite giving up the 1 run versus Sanchez's 0, did have more strikeouts and a better whip for the month. So,
Yes, he did.
flip a coin who you think was better. And by the way, just for the record here, that Tigers game did go final and Detroit did hang on. So a much needed win for them. And it looks like the Royals have 2 outs. Cincinnati did add a run here, but it's not 8 runs. So they're still looking good there. And I'm with you kind of on them. I think that I had them finishing either 1 and I think I had them finishing 1 and 2 in some order in this division. So that is surprising to me. But I will give a shout out to another team in this division who's doing really well, the White Sox.
Yes.
5 in a row, having a great run here, have caught up to Cleveland, only a 1-game gap. So great for them. Seattle, you mentioned before the show, starting to gain some ground in the West. 6 in a row. They now have the lead in the division, although it's easy when nobody else is over 500. That's a pretty easy mark to hit. You mentioned the Dodgers and the Brewers, 2 teams doing well and doing really well. And one team I want to highlight, it's a little bit of a homer pick, but the Orioles. 7 of their last 10 have fought their way back. They're getting closer to 500. And if they can get there by the All-Star break with this talent on this team, they could make a run in a weak American League and maybe start to challenge for a playoff spot. So I've been happy with them.
Absolutely, Mike. They're only a game out of the wild card right now. So anything
which is
could
wild
happen.
At 28 and 32. And if they had not blown a 5-run lead in the 7th against Toronto this past week, they would be tied for the wild card because it's Toronto.
They would have been flip-flop records.
That has that third wild card spot. So
you're absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah, they would be tied there. Actually, no, they would have it, and Toronto would not. That's the way it would work because they would basically have flip-flop places. So
yes,
yeah, they're one blown lead away from being in the wild card. So and they're getting some great pitching as well lately as well. So I want to highlight
and that's the thing too here. The season really starts June 1st. Yeah, that's what they say. The season starts June 1st. So we've got the teams that are already playing really well, and now this is when the games matter a little bit more. This is when you want to play your better baseball going into these summer months. So I like what I've seen out of the Orioles. They just don't hit for average though. They have so many guys with low 200s. I mean, Tyler O'Neill, what's his batting average? Right? I mean, like $180. What's he?
Who's Tyler O'Neill? Who's that? I don't know. Don't know the name there. I cannot remember in my time as an Orioles fan, and maybe I'm just not thinking about it clearly enough. I cannot remember a single player who Orioles fans have so unanimously wanted to launch into the sun than Tyler O'Neill. Like Tyler O'Neill, even like bad players in the past, there have been some defenders. There are 0 Tyler O'Neill defenders on Baltimore social media. Everybody wants my mother, who is one of the kindest people ever in the world, will be the first person to tell you that Tyler O'Neill needs to be off the team.
158 average. I was generous in the 180.
Yeah, it's bad. And it's funny. The thing that he was brought in to do was to hit left-handed pitching. This year, he has, I forget what the number is. It might have been fake, like a 211 OPS against left-handers.
He's only got 2 home runs.
Yeah. It's been terrible. But hey, they haven't played him for the past week.
What? But what's going well right now for Baltimore is Gunnar Henderson is hitting the ball, and Pete Alonso's starting to hit some homers as well. He's in.
And the combo of Adley Rutschman and Samuel Basayo
9 homers.
Leading baseball in pretty much every statistical catcher category as a team with those 2 combined. Leading in batting average, home runs, RBI. They're not leading in on-base percentage, but that's okay. I'll sacrifice that one. Leading in slugging, leading in OPS by a mile. I think they have 75 points in OPS over the second best catching team. So that's great.
Good.
And one team I wanted to highlight on the struggle bus here, Chicago Cubs. My goodness. I mean, look, and I love looking at the Cubs season. It's so bipolar is really the best way I can explain it. They started 7-9.
Yes.
Went on a 10-game winning streak, had a 3-game losing streak followed by another 10-game winning streak. And since then, they are 5-16.
They just had a 10-game losing streak.
Right. And they just had 9. That one didn't quite. No, you're right. 10. It was 10. It was 10. You're right.
Yeah, I think they were the first team in Major League Baseball to have 2 10-game winning streaks and a 10-game losing streak by June, which was nuts.
Right.
And I mean,
that's an insane thing to think about.
Massive streaks. And what's going on with Pete Crow Armstrong?
Oh man. Yeah, that is a great question. I have seen him look, he's never been like, he's always had weaknesses to his game. He's never been a five-tool guy, right? But lately, I mean, I've seen so many gaffes from him on the defensive side of the ball,
On the
which was
base
kind of
pads?
his bread and butter, right?
Forgetting how many outs there are.
Yeah.
Running himself into outs, dropping pop flies, overthrowing cutoff men and guys on base, and then his antics, with the fans and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if
Right.
this is something psychological with him right now. Does he have to be evaluated? Because the guy's got the talent, and there were talks about him possibly being an MVP type of candidate.
Right.
And I don't see that out of him. I think he's more of a distraction, and maybe, I don't know what his situation is with the Cubs, but they may want to think about moving on from him.
Yeah. Yeah. And if the season keeps derailing, they're gonna have to have these hard conversations about some of these guys. Probably, Nico Horner is gonna be in the talks. Michael Bush at first base, he's gonna be in some of these talks, some of the veteran guys as well, depending on contract situations.
Mhm.
Those could be very real conversations that the team has to have if the season keeps derailing. Although knowing what that we're talking negatively about them, they'll go on a 10-game winning streak next week, and they'll be right back in
It's
the
possible.
fight here.
It's possible.
Absolutely. So now we're going to look to some upcoming matchups ahead. Of course, we have the start of the week games here, but we'll have more series kicking off tomorrow, and then of course we'll have our weekend series to look ahead to. So, Freddie, which series are standing out to you as we look ahead here?
Well, I'm looking at the one that starts tomorrow with the Phillies and the Padres. The Padres are, Fernando Tatis just finally hit his first home run in the season the other day. And, I thought they were going to be, go on and win that game. They end up blowing the lead and losing, to the Nationals, getting swept by the Nationals, after, having a pretty bad homestand just before that. Now you're going to be going against the Phillies. You're going to face Aaron Nola. You're going to face, Steven Sanchez, and a team that is so bad offensively right now. This could be bad. They're trending in the wrong direction. And being a Padres fan, I don't know what to think at this point. If it continues, maybe you just start blowing it up. I mean, you got some bad contracts on that team, and you got the new ownership group. I know it's only June 1st, but you got to start thinking about this because I don't know. I have confidence that they'll be back and do good. It's the pitching that comes down to it. The starting pitching that they got guys hurt all the time. They got to be able to hit the ball, and that's the problem for them right now. So I'm really looking at that matchup, and then when we look over like the weekend, I'm going to talk about the Orioles. Or am I stealing that one? The Orioles and Blue Jays?
No. By all means,
I think a great AL East matchup. Both teams, like you mentioned, just played each other. Now they're fighting back and forth, similar records for the wild card. I think that's going to be a good one to watch as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The winner of that series could get themselves the momentum they need to start making the run, because they're both kind of right on that cusp, right? Because you got a lot of those American League teams that are like right there, but they, one step forward, one step back. They can't really charge. Somebody's going to have to start, aside from Cleveland, Tampa, you've got Cleveland and the White Sox. They're on their rolls in the Central, right? You've got Tampa and the Yankees. They're leading the East, and Seattle's on their roll. So you got one more team's going to have to step up and start, making a run, or maybe a couple teams at that last spot. And I think the winner of this series could be one of the teams to make that jump. So during the week here, looking at the schedule, one really good matchup stands out: Cleveland and New York. Two of the top teams in the American League facing off. I think that's going to be a really strong matchup, that one in New York. And then over the weekend, some good ones here: Boston and New York. It's a shame that the Red Sox aren't doing great, because that's always a fun series to watch. But I also there was one that I had ID'd here. This wasn't the one I had picked, but the Athletics in Houston, two more teams kind of like trying to get it going. to see if they can pick it up and go on a run. And then Chicago and Philly, the White Sox
Mm-hmm.
and the Phillies, two teams. Phillies who came back from both teams started off kind of in the bottom and have worked their way back up and gotten hot. So we'll see. By the way, over this week for that Padres matchup, a team that needs to get it going probably does not want to see Christopher Sanchez and Zach Wheeler in a series. So that's a pretty
So they get Wheeler as well. So they
bad draw.
get Philly's three best.
Yeah,
That's gonna be tough. And then you come back home and you play the Mets over the weekend. And the Mets are starting to play good ball. They've won 4 in a row. Juan Soto, starting to hit the ball here too. I mean, things could snowball in the wrong direction very quickly. And this is the time that they got to, start reeling it in and start getting some production from these guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now we're going to take one step down here, or, 2 or 3 steps, depending on what player you're identifying. We're going down to the farm to identify our minor league players we want to highlight. And there was one guy I want to highlight. We did have a streak end, a very impressive streak ended over the weekend. Seaver King of the Nationals, who had reached base in all 35 games in Double-A to start the season, and actually reached base in his first 8 games in Triple-A as well. Did finally have his streak end at the end of last week. He went 0 for 5. It was the longest on base streak. I think this is sane in baseball, so I wonder if it's implying at any level. Still having a great season. He has an 880, 877 OPS in just 11 or 12 AAA games. And you have to start the former first round pick on fire, the Nats rolling, but not a perfect lineup. There are holes kind of scattered in there, and people are starting to wonder, give this kid a couple more weeks. Does he get the jump to the big leagues by, maybe after the All-Star break? To help the team make a late push at a playoff spot. That's a conversation that
the Nats,
they're starting to have.
The Nats could definitely be one of those teams. They're fighting with the Phillies right now and second in the NL East. That they could be in a wild card spot. The Nationals are consistently playing some pretty decent baseball. James Wood is just crushing the ball right now too.
Smashing.
Every night he could take him. I mean, you get a great chance of predicting him to hit a home run at this rate. He's doing fantastic. So I like that one right there. The guy I'm going with is Jonah Cox. He was just called up by the Giants. So I want to see how he's going to do. A guy that's, got good speed, can hit for average, going to play all outfield positions. So I think that's something the Giants need. Something. They're one of those teams that, I just can't put my finger on. I know that they've got some players on there that they could probably move come the trade deadline. But yeah, I'm looking to see how he does. He was just called up from Double-A. So yeah, Jonah Cox is the guy that I'm going to keep my eye on for the next week. So he did have a base hit in yesterday's game, his first game for the Giants, in a big blowout win of the Rockies. So yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So much more of the minor league baseball season ahead as well. So more opportunities for some of these guys to get some momentum going. Now we are going to wrap up our show here with our Around a Diamond segment, where we talk about whatever topic is really grilling on our minds here. And Freddie, I'm going to let you kick it off here with whatever topic you feel like ranting about. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
Oh, gee, is this Major League Baseball, or what are we talking here?
Any diamond. If it's the shape of a diamond.
You know what? I just want to say, this first weekend of the NCAA college baseball regionals has just been outstanding. I've watched so much baseball. We've had great matchups, and I think this is only going to be, even better super regionals and the College World Series. So that's kind of taken my focus over the last week, especially with the teams that I follow here with the Padres, struggling, and the Angels, they're terrible. that's kind of taken me away from MLB a little bit. So I'm focusing a lot on the college side right now. So that's my thing here. Let's see who can win this College World Series.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And hey, look, you're in the 50s to around 60 game mark in baseball. You can put it down for a couple weeks and come back.
It's like
it's
taking a
okay.
nap on a Sunday afternoon when you're watching golf. You can come back and they're only on the 15th hole. So
right, exactly. You can be like, oh, he got a birdie. All right, cool. Sounds good. Yeah. So it's a topic that I think a lot of fans had maybe become blissfully unaware of at the start of the season, some of the excitement. And then, if you look in the college ranks, some of the exciting things there. But, a major point of contest for baseball did rear its ugly head this past week. And that was the initial rounds of the CBA collective bargaining agreement negotiations between the Players Union or the Players Association and the league. So both sides presented proposals. And I like this quote. I found this in an ESPN article. The lead negotiator basically said that there is a quote unquote clear sign of distance between the two sides. They are quite far apart. And Bruce Mayer, who is the Major League Baseball Player Association's interim executive director, no, I did not memorize that. I just read it off the article, said that the league, and this is an exact quote, effectively managed to cobble together the worst system for players in any major sport and not even close. So that's really encouraging to hear from the main guy for the Players Association. Effectively, and I kind of see the math. I kind of see where the math is coming from here. Effectively, the league's first offer to the Players Association was actually a reduction in overall salary. Now, the numbers were a little higher looking at the math, but when you give in the inflation of salaries and the fact that there are proposed increases in minimum salaries, and there's another component in here. It was salaries. I'm trying to find it really quick. And I guess player bonuses or like signing bonuses for new players,
Okay.
It effectively decreased the salary across the league. So I say all of this to say, unfortunately, there were a lot of discussions this past offseason of, is the league headed to a lockout? And based on the initial negotiations, now I have seen, in my time, and I'm not that old, I'm in my mid 30s, but
Yeah.
we've seen pretty much in every major sports league, most recently with the WNBA, actually, whenever these negotiations start, the two sides always seem to be miles apart. Like it's
Yeah.
almost presented initially as there's no way this deal is going to get done. And yet, in every case, minus, there was the weird like lockout with the NFL back in 2011, which impacted the draft a little bit. I remember that. But in pretty much every case, they always manage to find a way to find a deal, because ultimately at the end of the day, if they lose games, everybody loses money. So, everybody is incentivized to try to figure out a deal when it comes down to actually starting to lose the games. Now, my concern is with how far apart the sides are. First of all, I expect in the coming, I would say within the next week to 10 days, we are going to get an announcement that says the Players Association and the league have tabled talks. And we're not going to hear about it for another few months. I would expect that to happen pretty soon. My concern is when you get into the off season and they probably still won't have a deal, and when the timing starts to affect free agency and player signing in time for the season. That is the part. I do not think that we will miss any games. I think because it's setting up like the script we've seen so many times before. But I do have a concern about how it's going to impact free agency and players signing over the winter, and then their subsequent preparedness for the beginning of the 2027 season.
You know what, Mike? This is the first proposed salary cap since 1994. And that was the year that the MLB went on strike. I remember going to games at Angels Stadium with replacement players playing in these games. Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, the current CBA expires December 1st. I doubt that they'll have it be anywhere close to something before that time. And I think this could be disastrous. And you know, like, I think there's what they call the Larry Bird rule that could go into effect, where teams can sign current players that they have, which will exceed the salary cap. Stuff like that. There's so many ins and outs of it. I know as the weeks and months progress, we'll get more details on all of this, but anytime you talk about salary caps and the Major League Baseball, it's not a good combination.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I understand, there's, the give and take. The players have wanted, for a while they've wanted some type of floor, right, to keep teams from, not, spending absolute minimum dollars. And I get that. The give and take of that, of course, is the owners are going to want a cap. And it's not going to look like any other league, because every other league, NFL, NBA, WNBA, NHL going on, the floor is usually a pretty high percentage of the cap. Like, I think in the NFL, the floor is like 90% or something, or 85% of the cap. So, that's not going to happen here, because that there's no bar you can put that's going to make it fair for anybody where it's 90%. So it's going to be, the current and the original, the first offer that the NBA proposed was a floor of 171 million and a cap of 245. Which means teams like the Dodgers would have to cut like hundreds of millions of dollars in payroll, and teams like the Marlins would have to spend over $100 million. So, yeah, I actually don't think it's going to be that close, by whatever number they do find. I do think the floor is probably going to go down and the cap is going to go up, because it's not feasible. Now, I've also heard talks of there being like a phase-in period where like they kind of do it progressively, so teams like the Dodgers don't have to shed everything at once. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There will not be a deal in place by December 1st. There will not. If there was a sports book somewhere that had odds on that, and I'm not a betting man, I would place a bet that there is not going to be a deal by December 1st. I don't even think there's going to be a deal in February by the time players would start to report for off-season training activities. I predict that if a deal gets done, it's going to be sometime early March. And they might even, like, if they start to get close to a deal, maybe in January or early February, I could see there being some provision that says, hey, go ahead and agree in principle with players. Don't sign the damn contracts, but agree in principle to some of these deals, so that players are at least like kind of in position, right? They're not like, it's not like, I'm trying to think of who's a free agent. Trevor Rogers of the Orioles, who's a free agent pitcher, isn't sitting there in mid-March. The deal gets signed, and he's like, "Oh, great! Now I have to sign a contract and get ready in 2 weeks."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, that's good. That's a great point, Mike. We'll see how this progresses. It's going to be at a snail's pace,
100%.
for sure. But
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to think about what ifs, but hopefully they can agree upon, something. I mean, think about teams that, trying to when we were just talking about like the Royals, they're in a situation right now, and if they have to spend X more amount of money, where does that put them?
Right.
Or the Pirates, who are all, talking about trading Skeens because they can't, but, can they, if they increase the floor?
I mean,
We'll
hey,
see.
look, if they set a floor and the Pirates have to come up, that'd probably be the easiest, one to look at. Oh, wait, here we go. Let's just sign Skeens for 10 years and 350 million. There we go.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
That'll get us close to the floor.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, something like that. Well, that will do it for tonight's show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Reminder, if you are a fan of the show, do follow us on X at IESR_DMV and Freddie at FreddieB_sports. Freddie, any parting thoughts?
No, man, just we've got so much baseball going on right now. Like I said, the College World Series, is starting to heat up with the regionals and super regionals. The women's College World Series is going to be starting here in just a couple of days. And then, what's going on here in MLB. We got some really good matchups. Looking forward to that. And just another great week of baseball, Mike. Can't wait to see what news and headlines and everything, come our way for next week's show.
Absolutely. 100%. I agree with you there. It's an exciting time of year for baseball, and it's only going to get more exciting as the weeks progress. It might drop a little bit in August, but it'll pick back up. So once again, thank you all for tuning in. This has been Freddie B and Mike Pack for the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.